There are things you only start to notice when you slow down. I had always thought we were a good match because of how easily our rhythms aligned. I was the quiet planner type, the guy who kept reminders for reminders. She was a little more chaotic, in that charming, spontaneous way people romanticize in their 20s. She'd forget appointments, overcook pasta, double-book dinners. It used to make me laugh. But one thing about her never changed. Fridays, around 4:30, she'd suddenly become busy. It didn't start as a red flag. At first, it felt like coincidence. A last-minute yoga class. A delayed coffee with a friend. "I just need a few hours," she'd say. Nothing big. The first few times, I offered to join her. She smiled, kissed me, told me to rest. Said I deserved to relax. And so I did. Until I realized it wasn't just Fridays. It was also Sundays. Sometimes Wednesdays. Always after 4. And always with the same pattern. Phone silent, location off, hair done, slightly over-perfumed, no social media activity. She wasn't a heavy poster. But even that changed. No photos. No stories. Just a void. Eventually, I started joking to myself that she had a secret job. An underground identity. Something absurd. But somewhere between those jokes, I started noticing the numbers. When you look at a relationship the way an analyst would look at a graph, patterns jump out fast. For times in 6 weeks, she forgot to mention where she was going. All 4 times lined up with moments she claimed to be overwhelmed or needing space. She never lied directly. She was more elegant than that. She'd use omission like punctuation. Just stepping out. Back in a few. Don't wait up. It was subtle. Clean. And I hated how good she was at it. One Friday, I asked what she wanted for dinner, knowing she'd be gone. She smiled and said, "Surprise me when I get back." I did. I opened a spreadsheet and typed the first row. Friday, 4:37 p.m., left apartment, returned 9:18 p.m. I didn't know what I was building at the time. It just felt better to write it down than let it echo around in my skull. I added color codes. Yellow for confirmed outings. Gray for vague ones. Red for unaccounted hours. By the end of the weekend, I had 5 rows. And a small knot in my chest that hadn't been there before. The spreadsheet wasn't about trust. Not really. It was about confirmation. Cold, clean confirmation. I wasn't angry. I wasn't paranoid. I was collecting timestamps the way some people collect vinyls. Because they told a story you couldn't hear anywhere else. And the story was starting to write itself. Over the next 2 weeks, she added 6 more appointments to her mysterious routine. She never called them that. She called them nothing. Just vanished in clean windows of time. Always dressed a little too nice for the occasion. Always with her phone muted like she owed silence to someone. I learned to smile and nod. I told her to take her time. She appreciated how understanding I was. I added a new tab to the spreadsheet. Distance. Uber receipts. Calendar syncs. Photos she forgot to delete from our shared iCloud. The metadata told me everything she wouldn't. One shot had coordinates. Another had a time stamp that didn't match her story. I plotted them on a map. Her radius wasn't wide, just precise. There was a cluster she returned to more than once. A set of streets I recognized but never had a reason to go to. One coffee shop. A flower stand. A building with a familiar address I couldn't quite place. Until I did. It was the building her ex lived in. The one she told me she'd blocked. The one she claimed she couldn't stand even walking past. He had a different name. Mark. I remembered it because she said it like someone who was glad to be done with it. She told me she'd been blindsided. That he was manipulative. That she'd never let anyone treat her like that again. I believed her. And now here she was scheduling him like a class. Same days. Same time. Sometimes only an hour. Other times the full afternoon. Never at night. Never weekends. Always in that golden window between the end of her remote calls and dinner with me. And every time, she came home calm. Peaceful. Like a reset button had been hit. I remember once, right after she returned, she hugged me like she missed me deeply. Told me I made her feel grounded. Said I was her safe place. That was the night I changed the column title from unaccounted to mark time. It almost made me laugh. She had reverse engineered a second relationship into her life without dropping a single red flag. No lipstick on collars. No strange numbers. Just optimized deception. She was busy when she said she was. She really did go out. There was no lie on paper. She just didn't tell the whole truth. And I stopped assuming she owed it. I added filters to the spreadsheet. I created formulas that flagged days she canceled our plans versus when she needed air. Unsurprisingly, the flags lined up with his location like a budget with receipts. I started tracking her phone patterns. Not messages, just screen time. I noticed her screen was consistently off for 2-hour blocks during their schedule. No scrolling, no distractions, just airplane mode intimacy. On Friday, I stayed home from work. Told her I had a client issue and would be taking calls from the kitchen. She left at her usual time. Hair freshly curled. Same perfume. Red coat. A smile on her lips like something good was waiting. She texted me headed to yoga with a little emoji. I replied enjoy and added a line in my sheet. Friday, 4:29 p.m. mark. Confirmed. She returned at 8:54. Still glowing. She brought me a muffin from the coffee shop near the building. Said she thought of me. I smiled, took a bite, and added one more thing to the spreadsheet. Gifted item equals guilt? Hypothesis in progress. She once told me she hated Philadelphia. Said it gave her a weird feeling. Something about the pace. The people. Too grimy, she'd said. Too many bricks and sad delis. We joked about it a few times, especially when friends planned weekend trips there. She always declined. Said she'd rather stay local and rest. So when I saw the name Rittenhouse in her browser history, I paused. Not because I thought it was evidence. Because it made no sense. It was a hotel. Boutique. Mid-tier luxury. The kind of place you book when you don't want to be found, but want to feel expensive. She had checked availability for 2 weekends, both in the past. One of them lined up with the time she told me she was visiting her aunt in Jersey. I didn't confront her. I just checked my spreadsheet. And sure enough, that same weekend had a red entry. Location unknown. Battery off. Returned with suitcase. She had told me her aunt didn't use Instagram, didn't like pictures. That's why there were no photos. I believed her. I opened Google Timeline. Her location history was off, of course. But she'd ordered Uber from my account once that weekend by accident. I had the receipt. Pickup, our apartment. Drop-off, train station. Time, 3:12 p.m. Friday. Return trip, none. She had never gone to her aunt's. I started checking tagged photos from the hotel. Nothing. Then I went to Mark's profile. Yes, I'd found him, and scrolled back. He didn't post much. Just gym shots, beer, that kind of energy. But one image stood out. 2 whiskey glasses. A hotel bar. Blurred city lights in the back. Caption, needed a break. Timestamp? Same weekend. Same hotel. I looked at the ice cubes. One had a lipstick print. It matched the color she wore on special days. The one she called Deep Figure. I opened a blank page and wrote. So it wasn't just a schedule. It was a vacation. There's something about realizing you've been demoted and not told about it. Like showing up to work and finding your desk's been moved to the hallway. No email. No warning. Just downgraded. She came home that Sunday night with a tiny souvenir. A magnet shaped like a cat holding a cheesesteak. Said it was from a gas station. So tacky, it's cute. I nodded and stuck it on the fridge. Then I renamed a tab on my spreadsheet. Field trips. She didn't just cheat regularly. She exported it across state lines. At some point, the spreadsheet stopped being a curiosity. It became a system. I started naming the tabs. Weekdays. Trips. Alibis. Changes in routine. Pretext categories. The file grew so big I had to split it across folders. I gave it a neutral name. Something boring, something she'd never click. Annual budget draft Q2. I added formulas that auto-highlighted behavioral overlaps. Days she wore perfume and turned off her phone. Days she canceled on me and posted old selfies later. Days she claimed anxiety but traveled 40 miles out of town. It was all there, in color-coded symmetry. She was running parallel lives. What struck me most was how deliberate it all looked in retrospect. None of it screamed infidelity. But together, it didn't whisper anything else. One column, I called it overlap time, showed every instance where her Mark windows coincided with our shared calendar events. Lunches she bailed on. Concerts we skipped. Moments she forgot to mention. I added a running count. 18 overlaps. 7 direct cancellations. 4 fabricated illnesses. 1 family emergency that tracked to a rooftop bar. It was a machine. Not one built for love. One built for maintenance. And I wasn't the engine. I was just one of the polished parts, kept well-fed, well-comforted, well-misled. She'd even text during Mark days. I miss you. Let's watch something tonight. Don't forget the almond milk. Like the guilt needed to be padded. One tab I called post-return behavior. It logged everything she did after getting back from her disappearances. Hugs were more frequent. Sex was slower. Her compliments had more volume but less specificity. I wrote a note next to one of the rows. Increased intimacy after absence. Is this emotional compensation or performance? I realized I was no longer analyzing my relationship. I was auditing it, and it failed inspection. What haunted me most wasn't that she lied. It's how easy it was. The schedule didn't leak. The stories never overlapped. Even her friends, the few I spoke to, parroted the same vague narratives. She's just really into solo time lately. She's been going through a lot. She's healing, while rotating between two lives like shifts at a restaurant. I renamed the entire file. Relationship 2.0 with performance indicators. Then I locked it with a password. It wasn't for her. It was for me, a timestamp on the moment I stopped being in love and started being aware. She once called me her home base. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now it just felt accurate. In the most depressing way possible. Mark wasn't her ex. He was her rotation, her second shift, her emotional espresso. The fire she dipped her hands in to feel something before coming back to the calm. And I was calm, reliable, available, consistent. The 401k of her love life. The one you invest in, while spending wildly on what excites you. It hit me one night when I found an old message in our shared iCloud notes. From her to her friend, over a year ago, before she moved in with me. He's the kind of guy you marry, you know? Not the one you burn for. She was talking about me. It wasn't even meant to be cruel. She probably thought it was a compliment. I added that line to my spreadsheet. Gave it its own tab. Burn versus build. Then I stopped tracking. Not because I forgave her. Because I finally understood her. She didn't want to cheat. She wanted both lives. She wanted the house and the hotel. The safe arms and the risky hands. The stable man and the story she could tell later about the mistake she couldn't quit. There was no drama. No crying. Just a rotating chair with two names. One who loved her fully. One who loved her wildly. And she sat comfortably between them, sipping coffee from my mugs, wearing earrings he bought her. I watched her one morning getting ready. Hair twisted up. Same perfume. Lipstick slightly darker than usual. Friday, of course. She smiled at me like nothing had ever happened. And she was right, because I had never happened. Not really. I was the pause between chapters. The low volume between verses. The airbag in her emotional car crash. She once said, "You make me feel so balanced." And I thought that meant loved. There's a quiet kind of exit that doesn't slam doors or echo in hallways. It just happens. I spent a Sunday afternoon doing what she never expected. I updated our shared calendar. There was one event. Final update, Monday 8 a.m. Location, our living room. Duration, 15 minutes. Description, meeting no longer necessary. Then I packed. Not out of spite. Not in a rush. Just folded everything I cared about into a suitcase and zipped it once. Left the rest, the shared mugs, the books we both underlined, the blanket she stole from her sister. All exactly where she'd expect them to be. I didn't leave a note. She wouldn't read it anyway. She returned that night in her usual way. Soft entrance, faint smile, humming something she probably heard in Mark's car. I stayed calm. I asked about her day. She lied in lowercase. She went to sleep early. And I waited. At 7:59 a.m., she opened her phone. The calendar pinged. She looked at the invite, tilted her head, probably confused. I saw her click it, and then I watched her freeze. Not because of what it said, but because of what it didn't. No goodbye. No apology. No request for closure. Just cancellation. I slipped out 5 minutes later. Took my bag. Left the key on the counter. Quiet as a canceled meeting. There's no satisfaction in leaving someone who never noticed you were fully there. Just relief. I deleted the spreadsheet that night. Not because I needed to forget, but because I didn't need the data anymore. She had already built the system. I just finally stopped applying for the job.